Hey, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and today we are talking about equity crowdfunding, specifically a StartEngine campaign, which has raised over $170,000 from just under 300 investors. So this is a six-figure StartEngine campaign for artificial intelligence avatar-based training. It's a really interesting application and something I think actually is quite poignant when it comes to online learning and when it comes to having to learn things with other people. So if you're trying to simulate something, using artificial intelligence and avatar-based training can be a really easy way to do that. Let's just say you're trying to simulate conversation or simulate things related to the military or simulate things related to language learning. Like I can see so many applications for this. And on today's episode, not only did we learn how this entrepreneur was able to raise six figures on StartEngine, but also some of the applications for this, some of the ways in which you can grow a campaign, his advice for you for running one of these equity crowdfunding campaigns. We get into all that today in the podcast episode. And I also think it's something where if you're interested in investing in this company or other companies, you'll learn a little bit about what goes behind that. So you can literally invest as low as $276. Like that's pretty low for an actual investment, you know. When it comes to investing in a startup company, you can invest in a few different platforms. When it comes to StartEngine, WeFunder, Republic, Seed Invest, etc. I wrote a lot about this in my book, Equity Crowdfunding Explained, which really is the foundation of how to run one of these campaigns and also advice for investors who are just getting started investing in startups. You can go to crowdcrux.com/equity audio if you want to get an audible version of Equity Crowdfunding Explained. It really is an A to Z solution helping you step by step, especially if you are a beginner and you're not familiar with things like regulation crowdfunding, regulation D, regulation A+. This will really be a good primer for you. And that link is crowdcrux.com/equity audio. That link will take you to the audible version of Equity Crowdfunding Explained. That being said, I think that when it comes to this year, we're seeing a really big growth in the new campaigns that are being launched under equity crowdfunding platforms. So not just StartEngine, also some of these other ones like WeFunder and Seed Invest. And I really think we're seeing this across the board. And it's really, to me, an incredibly ripe opportunity for you as an entrepreneur if you want to get investors for your startup. Now, why the heck would you want to get investors for a startup that's just so you can raise upwards of $1,070,000? Why not go to approach VCs? Why not get high net worth angel investors? Like, why even go this route, right? Because Kickstarter is great because you can do a pre-order essentially. You don't have to give away equity in the company. You can raise six figures and then you get the minimum order quantity to buy the product. Like, why even consider equity crowdfunding? I think it really comes into play with this whole idea of feedback learning and also lean startup methodology. And by that, I mean, when you're getting a bunch of people to invest in your company, and let's just say it's only $500K, that still is a ton of evangelists for your brand. These are people who are investing in your company, who are going to be using the product potentially, who can spread the word to their network, who have their own networks and their own strengths, what they can bring in terms of helping accelerate the growth of a startup company. So there's a lot that goes into just, I think collecting a crowd online is extremely powerful. And it's a really great way as well to get media attention. It's an incredible exposure mechanism. So I like to think of it almost as a boot camp, a crowdfunding crash course, a boot camp, a business boot camp. Really, it's basically an accelerator where you got to get together all of this data and information in order to sell people on your vision and your dream. And you got to do the same thing if you're going to be raising money in a more traditional way. So the biggest benefit I see here is there's a lot more leverage where other VCs can see that. They can see the attention you're getting. It's a lot more of a marketing effort in that way, much more consumer focused than just VC focused. And you also don't have to deal with just one or two, trying to convince one or two people to put a bunch of money into your project. Instead, you're almost having like micro investors participate in your actual raise. And you also get to see all the comments, like the reason why people are investing. And they might also have connections in your industry. So it goes way beyond just simply raising money. It's really about building a strong foundation where you can learn a lot from your customers and can accelerate the growth of your company. And finally, you really engage that whole lean startup methodology movement where it's a build, measure, learn feedback loop, right? And you can only do that once you have people who are going to use your product and have the ability to introduce this to their friends and family. So I think this is an incredibly innovative new technology and also a new platform for you guys to use. And I hope you take a lot out of today's podcast episode. It's coming up right after this. This podcast episode is sponsored by the Gadget Flow. The Gadget Flow reaches over 28 million people, and they've been around since 2012. They are Indiegogo and Kickstarter experts. They featured over 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns. And if you have a technology or design campaign, it is a great platform to generate awareness and get backers. You can check them out at thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. Hey guys, welcome to Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have a really interesting product on the show, which is basically artificial intelligence, but applied to education and training. It's really interesting. I'm so looking forward to this podcast episode, and I have the founder here right on the line with me right now. This is, to me, one of those things that has a lot of potential over time. I think you're like hearing about this a lot. Lewis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
When we get started, maybe you could tell listeners a bit about your background when it comes to entrepreneurship or your business background a little bit.
Yeah, so I started out actually heading a research lab in artificial intelligence and education at the University of Southern California. But I always had in the back of my mind launching my own venture. And so we started developing this technology of using avatars to train and assess skills in simulations. And we saw that had a lot of potential. So I founded the company, Alelo, and then transitioned to it full time and been learning as I've gone. I've got a lot of good help from expert advisors along the way. I've had a very strong board who's helped me out. So it's worked out very well for me.
And how long has the company been in operation now?
We started the company in 2006. So initially, we were developing immersive games for helping military people prepare for overseas deployments, Iraq and Afghanistan, where they actually had to speak the local language and behave in a culturally appropriate way in order to succeed at the game. This was early winner of the Serious Games Challenge. And so we did that for a while. We've continued to do that. We developed games for Voice of America, for learning English in everyday situations. We've continued to develop cultural awareness training for over 90 countries around the world. But in the last few years, I've been looking for ways of actually expanding the business. Up to that point, we had been developing game simulations on contract, and I wanted a business model that had a lot of growth potential. So with the help from investors, we developed a cloud-based platform that allows us to deliver this technology in a wide range of applications and started lining up customers for subscription service. And so we now have customers in a couple dozen countries using our platform now. It's really starting to take off.
So you've been in business for about 14 years. When it comes to the number of people that you've impacted, do you have any ballpark numbers of the number of users you guys have or how much you've generated revenue-wise?
500,000 people at least have learned using our products. And the number continues to grow. We don't have the full number because some of those we provide our product to our customers, and then we don't necessarily track all the people that have it online. But I think 500,000 at least.
It looks like you've done over 50 million in revenue too, right?
That's correct. That's right. So over 50 million from custom development contracts, and now increasingly from our subscription-based business model. And what I find so attractive about that is that the marginal cost for putting each new subscriber online is minimal. And so we really have an opportunity now to scale up revenue and gross margin rapidly using this. We could easily scale this up to millions of users, no problem. It's pretty exciting.
So when it comes to the company, you've been doing private raises, it seems like up until this point. So now you guys are exploring crowdfunding. How did that even come into the picture? Because it's such a new way of raising funds. How did you begin to have that discussion? Where did you find out about it?
I found out about it from a member of my board who was a CEO of another company. He had a successful Regulation CF raise, and he recommended that I try it out. And he had, for his raise, he hired a marketing expert who knows how to manage these crowdfunding campaigns. And so I brought her on to help us with our raise. And that was key, having the right marketing expertise to make these crowdfunding rounds work is really critical, I think.
Do you have a name that we can look into if people want to use her as a resource in the future?
Sure, happy to do that. Our person we work with, his name is Rhonda Broughton. It's Agency Access is the name of the agency. And so, yeah, she has experience with a number of these raises.
Cool. So you basically decided you wanted to do this equity crowdfunding campaign. How's that different from some of the other raises you've done? Like, is it different in terms of the communication or the types of investors that have been interested so far? How is it different?
It is very different. And for comparison, we did another Regulation D raise a couple of years ago on a different platform. And for the Regulation D, that was a lot of really networking with individual high net worth investors and getting them on board. Whereas with the Regulation CF, we can put our materials on the site and just about anybody can invest. And we put it on to a popular crowdfunding platform, which is StartEngine, which has a lot of offerings and a lot of investors. So a lot of the investors coming to us in this round are people who have invested in other StartEngine offerings. So that has expanded our reach quite a bit. Also, because we're reaching out to a broader community of potential investors, social media is a key part of our campaign. We make heavy use of Facebook, of LinkedIn, of Twitter as part of our campaign. And that wasn't very important at all for our Regulation D round because that was all contacting people directly and speaking with them. So very different marketing approach.
When it comes to StartEngine, was there a reason you decided to go with those guys instead of some other alternatives like Seed Invest or WeFunder or other sites?
Well, partly because Rhonda, who worked with us, had used it before, but also I heard good things about it. And I think one of the key things is that they have their own marketing efforts. We had Regulation D, we had run through flash funders, and we found that they didn't really have much of a marketing presence at all. We were really doing all the marketing work ourselves. So I was looking for a platform that was really put an effort on getting the word out. And StartEngine is certainly one of them.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing with this new subscription platform, right? So you're kind of opening this up. What are some of the other use cases you see aside from training the military or these larger government contracts? Like, what do you see as some of these other use cases?
Interestingly, COVID-19 has really opened up opportunities for us. And some of the key ones on the education side, COVID-19 is forcing educators to go online. They're having to go from classroom to Zoom, and they're discovering the limitations of teaching through a video conferencing platform. So they're looking for tools that can augment that video conferencing experience. So we created a set of products that run on our nSkill platform that allow people to practice their English conversational skills. And so that's proving to be very popular. Another application is for corporations to train customer-facing personnel. So, example, training retail specialists, training people in finance, where the key is having good communication skills, and the customer, the corporation, wants to be able to make sure that people really can apply those skills effectively, and they want quantitative metrics of how well their people can apply the skills. And so that is what our platform provides. And we're getting interest in hiring. So now, particularly under COVID-19, a lot more hiring happens remotely and virtually. So companies want good confidence that the people they're hiring have the skills that they're looking for. So we can use our AI avatar technology to create, if you will, assessments in the form of simulations of situations that people might encounter on the job and see how well they handle it. Feels much better than like a multiple choice test or something like that.
Yeah, I love that also when it comes to sales. Sales is one of those things where you think you know everything that you have to say until you're actually in that situation where you're talking with another human being, right? And all of a sudden you forget everything, or you're doing
Well,
public speaking, right? Whereas
well,
this, it almost puts you in
well,
that situation
yeah.
where you can try it out. And in that way, you can almost simulate the experience and be better prepared.
It's a great application, and a lot of mistakes that a lot of salespeople make is they think that it's about pitching, but sales is about listening, right? So we can engage people in a conversation with an avatar, so that the sales representative can see what questions the virtual customer comes back with, what objections they make, and then be able to respond to those. So it can be very powerful as a sales training tool.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. Fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Have you seen any kind of metrics in terms of the effectiveness of this versus traditional learning, in terms of either the stickiness where people learn faster or they're able to improve once you test them? Like, have you seen any stats on that?
Well, yeah, we collect stats all the time. That's one of the advantages of having a cloud-based AI platform, is that we're collecting data all the time, and we can measure how well people are doing. We can look at, say, if they go off the platform for a period of time and then come back, how do their skills decay and at what rates, and then we also talk with the users. And so what we are seeing is that, first of all, it helps people gain more proficiency, fluency, particularly in these communicative tasks. They also gain self-confidence. And this can be somewhat hard to quantify, but it's definitely an effect. You see, the thing you have to understand is that you can, when you're practicing with an avatar, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. You can practice as much as you want, and so that is learners find that very helpful. And then we also see that the learning persists well over time. As I said, we can measure that. And part of why we think that is happening is because people are able to get to a higher level of proficiency to start with, and they're practicing their skills in simulations of realistic situations. And that helps when they encounter a similar situation in the future. And this is actually something that we learned from our training for military people, that they would go overseas and they would be in some situation talking with people locally, and it felt to them like something that they had experienced before. And that provided them that added element of self-confidence, which, by the way, people react to. They when they see that you are coming across with self-confidence, then they respond better to you.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. So I want to talk a little bit about the equity crowdfunding campaign and sort of what you think goes into a successful project. Because, I mean, you've already hit the 100K mark, which I think is pretty awesome. You guys are obviously still raising money or that you've raised. But can you share a little bit of, like, what do you think allowed you to be successful in that way?
Well, first of all, you have to have a compelling concept and you have to market it well. So going into this, we had a feeling that this avatar-based training and education would appeal well to people. But then we had to explain, well, why is this important now? So we're kind of lucky in a way that the COVID-19 epidemic happened when it did, because it suddenly raised people's awareness of the need of being able to learn remotely and virtually. A key part of it also is looking at other crowdfunding campaigns and studying them, learning from them. So before I launched our campaign, I went and took a look at some of the other campaigns that were out there. And this, by the way, is one good thing about these crowdfunding campaigns, is that the information is all available to the public through these platforms. So, I looked at I saw, okay, here is a company that raised $1 million. Well, how did they do it? Oh, okay, they keep putting out updates of new stuff that they're doing, and that raises interest of the investors. So sure enough, that's what we're doing. And I guess another thing I'd mention is, this is an opportunity to reach out to your people who know your company and believe in it and want to be part of it. I was really pleasantly surprised in seeing, lots of people who knew about Alelo. Now here was an opportunity for them to be part of it, and they jumped on board. And so that's why we were able to raise so much so fast on this crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like people get to participate in your career, right? So
yeah.
They really get to celebrate your accomplishments with you in that way. The other thing I noticed is, like, there's this StartEngine owners 10% bonus. What is that thing?
Part of the strategy, and I learned this from Rhonda, our marketing expert, is that you offer bonuses to encourage people to invest multiple times and also to invest quickly. So what we did was, it's not required, but StartEngine proposes that you offer a bonus to their existing investors. And that was a good move, because that meant that there was a whole bunch of previous investors who know about crowdfunding, and they came to our site right away and checked it out. We offered an additional bonus for people, not just StartEngine, but for anybody. If they invested in the first 72 hours, then they would get a 15% bonus. And that gave us a big shot in the arm to get started. So these are all really incentives to get investors to take a look at your offering and join in.
So it's kind of about giving people a reason why they should take action now, creating that urgency, it seems.
Totally.
And
yes.
Also, like, making them feel special, right? Like, this is kind of like a VIP treatment where they're getting, something that they normally wouldn't be able to get access to there.
You're exactly right. Yes, that's a very important part of it.
I also noticed, so you guys are offering like rewards, right? Or things that people can claim on the page if they invest a certain amount. Can you talk us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there are rewards in the form of free subscriptions to our products. And I'll tell you, Sal, part of our rationale here is not just to offer free subscriptions, but to have a group of interested users trying out our products, giving us feedback. Because we figure that if they're investors, they're invested in the success of the product. So we can say, hey, we've got this new feature. Would you like to try it out? And that way we can get more market feedback.
Beta tester, yeah.
Absolutely. And then at people at a high enough level, we've actually offered to create their own avatar for them. And actually, one of our investors already took this up on that. We're going to create an avatar in their likeness that they
that's pretty cool.
off to their friends. And that, by the way, I think is another good investor strategy. It's good if you give investors something that they can then show off to their friends, so that will get other people attracted.
Yeah, I love that idea. Just one quick question on the subscription. So if I get a subscription, does that mean I get access to like courses I can take, or is it okay? So predefined courses you've made.
Yeah. Right now, we've got a suite of courses for English as a foreign language, and we've got a course for business communication skills. And we're working to expand that going forward. But those are the ones that are available right now. So depending upon people's background, if they're from an educational background, here we'll try out our English course, see what you think. If they're from a training development background, then say, hey, try out our communication skills course. And by the way, communication skills are the skills that are number one in demand for new employees, as well as for requisite for promotion into leadership positions. Mm-hmm. So it is an important attraction.
Important skill set. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you basically had a really successful career here when it comes to the 14 years you've been building the company. Now you're going on StartEngine. You're getting lots and lots of traction. You're growing this platform. What do you think has been the biggest contributor when it comes to your own success as an entrepreneur? Because there are so many other people out there that have ideas that they don't act on, or they have companies that go downhill. Like, what do you think has contributed to your own success?
Well, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always into learning new stuff. And I think, the thing that you have to be aware of as an entrepreneur is that you're going into an area where there are a lot of unknowns. Some of it is stuff that you don't know. Some of it is stuff that nobody knows. So having that willingness and ability to learn is a key asset. I think another thing is willingness to listen to what customers have to say. I think it's a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly tech entrepreneurs, which is that they say, okay, I've got this great idea. I'm going to have to push that idea. I want to push that idea out. But it may be that your idea isn't exactly what the market needs, and it needs to be adjusted. So, some people kind of keep pushing their idea too far and then wonder why they're not getting the traction that they expect. But also, stuff is a hell of a lot of fun. I think that what we do is fun and it makes a difference. Honestly, when I get reports, people back, say from the military saying, oh, what we learned helped save lives when we were on deployment, or English students who give their own testimonials in English on WhatsApp about how Alelo helped them. This is all such great stuff, and that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, having that larger purpose, right? That larger vision that you have it almost makes it so you don't have to motivate yourself as much.
That's exactly right, yes.
I think you also have built a really strong team behind this entire project, and where maybe some of your blind spots are having advisors, like even that one board member who introduced you, right, to equity crowdfunding. So having that strong team as well.
I think that's right. I think a lot of people think that they have all the skills, and it takes a certain amount of humility to just shut up and listen to what other people have to say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's something that I'm still working on, definitely. So I think you have about 77 days to go, right, with your project. So people can still invest. Where can they learn a little bit more about this revolutionary technology that you're offering now?
So if they go to the StartEngine site, startengine.com/Alelo, then they'll see lots of information there. Or go to our company website, alelo.com. You'll see lots of examples there, case studies. We have a lot of information available on the site. You can connect with me via LinkedIn. I've got a whole bunch of LinkedIn Pulse blogs that talk about what we do and the rationale for it. So those would be the main things I would recommend.
My final question for you is, when it came to educating yourself about equity crowdfunding, were there any resources that you found to be helpful in terms of either the contracts or what is Regulation CF? Do you have any places you could recommend people go to?
I had a good corporate attorney to get started, who's familiar with offering securities, all that kind of stuff. And I'm really glad of that. It can be a little bit misleading when you're going through setting things up on one of these crowdfunding sites. You say, well, okay, you just enter all this information and then turn the crank and then you have an offering. Well, you really need an expert legal advisor to review everything that you're putting in, making sure that it's accurate, what you're not setting yourself up for a mistake down the road. So I would highly recommend that. We use Stubbs Alderton, who is one of the big firms in Silicon Beach, and they're great. I think the world of them.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate you sharing all those great tips and look forward to watching your progress in the remaining 77 days.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Hope you took something away from today's podcast episode. We got a lot of them out there. I've been doing this now since 2015, the podcast, and my blog since 2012. So I've seen a lot of evolution when it comes to crowdfunding. And specifically with equity crowdfunding, this is actually the reason that I got so interested in crowdfunding back in 2012. So I was like a university student basically, and I was seeing the Jobs Act coming to fruition. I was like, this is so exciting, man. You can actually invest in startup companies online. Like that's going to be a massive boom one day. And I think it's something where as a individual, you weren't able to do this until very recently. Like you had to invest in public companies. For you to have access to the next Facebook, the next Uber, the next Dropbox, it's virtually unheard of. Unless you're like an accelerator or a super high net worth angel investor, or you are a VC, and you're basically directing the funds of other people who have put money into your firm, into your VC pool, then you really don't have access to be able to invest in startup companies. So to me, that's frustrating. Why should you not be allowed to participate in one of the biggest wealth creators of ever, in the United States? Most companies that are growing rapidly, that are, continuing to see higher and higher growth rates, more and more progress, eventually go IPO. They not just make their founder wealthy, but all of the people that were able to invest in them in the early stages. It's this incredible thing, I think, where when you have a really big success, you're not just creating one millionaire or 1 billionaire. You're creating this whole team of thousands of people who are benefiting from that. When Microsoft goes public, when Facebook goes public, you have all of these people who were there in the early days who end up doing really financially well. In many cases, even better than entrepreneurs who just start their business from scratch, like start a small business. They've done it phenomenally better. I remember there's one story, this guy who ended up painting a mural, one of Facebook's mural, I forget his name, but he ended up getting paid in stock rather than just, paying him for his normal hourly rate. So Mark Zuckerberg paid him in stock, and it ended up being worth $500 million a couple of years later, which is crazy, and this was incredible, right? So I think that this is really an opportunity, not just with this project obviously, but with equity crowdfunding in general. And it's one of the reasons why I want to share a little bit more about that, either in my book, Equity Crowdfunding Explained, which is available on Amazon or Audible, but also when it comes to coaching people, right? So if you're thinking about getting in on the ground floor of this, and I'm sure you might want to do more than one raise. I've had people on the show who have done more than one StartEngine campaign. You might be interested then in kind of dipping your toes in the water with one successful raise and seeing how that goes. And if you are on the ground floor of this thing and it goes really well, then that's no reason you can't do another crowdfunding campaign, and you can't in the same way run multiple, like with the Kickstarter campaign. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to run your own equity crowdfunding campaign, the first step will be to book a one-on-one coaching call with me. You can go in depth through the A to Z of running one of these campaigns, and also for your specific product and your specific company. So the link to book a one-on-one coaching call with me, these are hour-long intensive calls. You can go to crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. Go to that link. You can book a one-on-one coaching call with me. Tell me a little bit of information about you and your project and what you're trying to accomplish, and we can get that squared away ASAP. Also, when it comes to doing one of these projects, I would think a little bit as well about what you want your brand to be, because I think this is a phenomenal branding opportunity. One of those things where you're gonna get so much more exposure and attention than if you just announce, hey, we have a new company. It's like, okay, there are tons of new companies that are launched every single day. But when you have a story, a media story, it suddenly elevates your brand to a certain degree. And I think that is really freaking special. Anyways, man, thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you have a good weekend. Stay safe. Have a good weekend. Have an adventure of some kind. I hope you enjoy the weather outside, and I will see you next time.